Broadcasting live from the Albay PIO News Center, providing you the most exclusive news update from all over the province. This is News at 12. In the local scene, more than 700 families were visited and assessed during a joint visitation conducted by the provincial government of Albay and the Department of Social Welfare and Development in the 1st District on January 8. The activity was led by Albay Governor Noel E. Rizal and the Department of Social Welfare and Development Secretary Rex T. Gatchalian, who personally visited 4 evacuation and resettlement sites in Malilipot and Tabaco City. The visited sites were the San Antonio Evacuation Center in Malilipot, housing 22 families or 78 individuals. The Buang Evacuation Center in Tabaco City, accommodating 85 families or 333 individuals. San Jose Elementary School with 399 families or 1,466 individuals, and the San Vicente Hiraya Minawari Resettlement Area, sheltering 238 families or 932 individuals. A total of 744 families were accounted for during the joint visitation, according to provincial officials. The Department of Social Welfare and Development distributed food packs, hygiene kits, and sleeping kits to evacuees in 3 of the 4 sites visited. Officials said 3,000 food packs will be distributed as part of the agency's commitment to provide 15 days of food assistance to affected families. In other story, the Department of Social Welfare and Development and the provincial government of Albay assured families displaced by Mayon volcano's Alert Level 3's status that food assistance and livelihood support will continue while evacuations remain in effect. Following the mandatory evacuation of residents within the 6-kilometer permanent danger zone, agencies shifted focus towards sustained food supply and income support for families staying in evacuation centers. Department of Social Welfare and Development Secretary Rex T. Gatchalian offered the immediate release of additional family food packs to the Bicol region to reinforce relief operations. The augmentation followed the earlier distribution of ready-to-eat food boxes to evacuated families in Kamalig, Tabaco City, and Malilipot. Recognizing that many evacuees are farmers whose livelihoods depend on Mayon slopes, Gatchalian announced the activation of the Cash for Work program. Under the program, displaced residents can earn daily wages through evacuation center maintenance, communal gardening, and local cleanup activities. Albay Governor Noel E. Rizal reiterated that the 6-kilometer permanent danger zone remains strictly off-limits to all human activity to prevent casualties should volcanic activity intensify. Social workers remain on standby to provide psychosocial support to children, elderly evacuees, and other vulnerable groups affected by displacement. In other news, Albay Public Safety and Emergency Management Office, APSEMO, distributed family tents to the local government unit of Malilipot to support students or residents displaced by Mayon volcano's continued unrest under Alert Level 3. The tents will serve as temporary shelters for families evacuated from barangays Calbayog, San Roque, and Kanaway, affecting 339 families or 1,466 individuals. APSEMO said the tents aim to ensure safer and more dignified living conditions for evacuees while they remain away from their homes. The tents were sourced from the Department of Social Welfare and Development through the Office of Civil Defense Region 5 as part of interagency response efforts. APSEMO said the distribution is part of the provincial government's continuing efforts to augment local government resources amid the volcanic situation. Authorities continue to monitor Mayon volcano and coordinate with concerned agencies to ensure the safety and welfare of affected residents. In the national scene, Senator Panfilo Lacson said the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee who will hold its next hearing on the flood control project controversy on January 19 at 1 p.m. Lacson said the committee will subpoena former DPWH officials Manuel Bunuan, Tregev Olaivar, Maynard Ngu, and former Representative Elizalde Ko for failing to attend earlier hearings with possible arrest warrants if they still refuse to appear. He said the committee wants to clarify how a 50 billion pesos special allotment release order from unprogrammed funds was released on December 27, 2024, involving the Budget Department and the Office of the Executive Secretary. Lacson added that Representative Leandro Leviste may be invited through House leadership, noting similarities between Leviste's public documents and those in his possession, though he has not seen the cited SAP and OP. He said the so-called Cabral files could only be used as basis for filing cases against cabinet members if the documents are first authenticated by the DPWH. In other story, the Department of Public Works and Highways announced the relief of 4 regional directors and several other officials as part of ongoing investigations within the agency. DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon said officials were removed for various reasons connected to investigations, adding that details could not be fully disclosed at this time. The relieved officials include regional directors from Regions 1, 4A, 5, and 7, as well as assistant directors or regional directors from Regions 4B and 5. Also relieved were district engineers from the Metro Manila 3rd District Engineering Office and the South Manila District Engineering Office. In addition, several officers in charge district engineers were removed for failing to meet Civil Service Commission qualifications as the DPWH implemented a department-wide reshuffle. In other news, Senator Panfilo Lacson flagged alleged 2.5 billion pesos worth of allocables linked to Senator Jaime Marquez in the 2025 National Expenditure Program, based on the so-called Cabral files and records of the Department of Public Works and Highways. Lacson said Marquez criticized the presence of pork in the 2026 budget despite allegations that she had allocations in the 2025 General Appropriations Act and did not raise the issue during the bicameral conference committee deliberations. He also noted that Marquez rejected the 2026 budget over alleged soft pork while having been present at the distribution of assistance programs in the previous year. Lacson responded to Marquez's criticisms of the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, saying she had not attended hearings and denying claims that he restricted discussions of certain personalities in the flood control investigation. Marquez replied that the allocables were wish lists marked for later release and said opposition senators received no funds, while Lacson said officials should reflect on their actions before criticizing others. Lacson declined to comment on the claims that budget allocations could be used to influence impeachment proceedings against Vice President Sara Duterte, citing the Senate's role under the Constitution. And in the news outside the country, Meta called on Australia to rethink its world-first ban on social media use for children under 16, even as it reported blocking more than 544,000 underage accounts since the law took effect. The law, reinforced from December 10, 2025, requires platforms such as Meta, TikTok, and YouTube to prevent minors from holding accounts or face fines of up to 45.5 million Australian dollars. Meta said it removed hundreds of thousands of underage accounts from Instagram, Facebook, and Threads while maintaining that it is complying with the legislation. The company urged the Australian government to work with industry and proposed age verification and parental consent at the app store level to prevent teens from moving to other platforms. Meta warned that the ban could isolate young people and drive them to less regulated online spaces, arguing that early effects suggest the policy may not be meeting its safety objectives. In other story, U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said hundreds more federal agents are heading to Minneapolis following the fatal shooting of protester Renee Nicole Good. Noem stated that the officer involved acted in self-defense and characterized Good's action as potentially threatening. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey disputed this account, saying footage suggests Good's vehicle posed no immediate danger. Noem added that additional officers would support immigration enforcement operations and cautioned against interference from protesters. Protests have continued in Minneapolis and other cities, with demonstrators calling for a full FBI investigation into the incident and local officials emphasizing law enforcement must act within constitutional guidelines. And finally, in the news outside the country with reference to the Philippines, the International Criminal Court's Pre-Trial Chamber 1 rejected former President Rodrigo Duterte's request to appeal a ruling denying access to communications between the court's registry and experts assessing his fitness for trial. Duterte's legal team argued that the chamber erred by not considering the relevance of the information to the defense or potential risks to the investigation or witnesses. The PTC noted that interlocutory appeals are exceptional and can only be granted if the issue would significantly affect the fairness or outcome of the proceedings or materially advance the case. The chamber said an appealable issue must be a specific matter requiring a decision, not just a disagreement or repeated arguments already addressed in the previous ruling. For these reasons, the ICC concluded that Duterte's request largely repeated prior arguments and misrepresented the earlier decision, and therefore it was denied. And that's all for the news at 12, January 13, 2026. We'll be back tomorrow for more news updates. Thanks to our news writer, LJ Lurejo and Naomi Ruth Hernandez. And on the technical side, Ted Bobis. And our Provincial Information Officer, OIC Marty Gonzalez. And under the supervision of our Governor, Noel E. Rosal, I am Greg Hallare. Thank you for subscribing. Albay in my heart.